What is FMS? Besides what I've said already, the functional movement screen. It's a tool used to assess movement patterns that are key to normal function in the human body. Like we talked about, we're born naturally functional, and the way we live changes that, and we get dysfunctional. It's a series of 7 movement patterns. It identifies functional limitations and asymmetry, so it looks for the weak link in your body and identifies it. It also provides baseline feedback to assess and then correct dysfunctional movement patterns. So why is functional movement important? And this is what I call the rider's training pyramid. If anyone's familiar with like the dressage training pyramid, it's kind of the pyramid for the human. Foundation is the most important part. It's the biggest part of the pyramid. The bigger your foundation, the more solidity you have to go up the top. So foundation, with regards to the FMS, is functional movement. If you've got really good functional movement patterns, we can then get you stronger. Once we get you stronger, you're ready for performance. Performance is things like strength, power, and agility. So once you're basically in a good solid place, that's your next skill before you get to your actual skill level. So for a basketball player, for example, once they've got a foundation there, then they start working on their explosive speed and their ability to jump. For us as riders, this is getting us that next step to being able to move in different planes and be really solid, have good proprioception in our body, so we can then work on skill. Skill for us is all the time in the tack. That's all your riding lessons, everything you do to ride and make yourself a better athlete that way. And then obviously the goal is where you're going. If you've got a good solid foundation, you've worked on performance, you've moved to your skill. Say your goal is to win a certain competition or even just successfully trail ride on a spooky horse. If you're solid there, it should be pretty, I won't say easy, but logical to progress up to your goal. Now, here's your dysfunctional pyramid, and this is where most people are. That's your foundation with a really big crack in it. So what happens, we have all of the same pieces. If you look here, your foundation is no longer sitting steady at the bottom, it's kind of broken in half. You can still work on performance, you can still work on skill. Look where your goal is. You might get kind of to your goal, but it's kind of upside down on its head, at the bottom. There. So this is what's called putting fitness on top of dysfunction. If you don't have those functional movement patterns, and you keep training and training, you're really getting your dysfunction stronger. What I've also done is for each one, in black is kind of what the screen does in general for the general population. In red is how that might apply to us as riders. So this is the deep squat. This is a very nice deep squat pattern. A little bit hard to achieve. What is it doing? It's looking at your extremity mobility. So how mobile are your arms and legs? Also postural control. How can you maintain that upright posture? Pelvic and core stability. And it challenges the total body mechanics and neuromuscular control. So with this one, you think about it, an independent seat. Every one of those pieces is what people talk about, an independent seat. Well, we're going to hear core and pelvic stability a lot in this. We hear that all the time in riding as well. The second one, the hurdle step. Here you're looking at bilateral mobility and stability of your hips, your knees, and your ankles. Very important for riding to have mobility in those joints. It also exposes compensation or aim symmetry in the stepping functions, and it challenges stability and control of the pelvis and core again. So this, with riding, you think about mounting. That's kind of a very similar kind of movement there to get up. If you are not functional in that pattern, mounting could be a little bit difficult or not very pretty to watch. And then lateral work. If you think we're always using kind of one side to the other, if you're kind of turning in a left circle, you're putting one leg in and the other step back there. So that's a little bit of an asymmetrical movement as well. Inline lunge. This is dynamic pelvic core control in an asymmetrical hip position. So there's that asymmetrical again, which we find ourselves in when we start asking for certain things. Spinal stabilization between upper and lower extremities. And then it challenges hip, knee, ankle, and foot mobility and stability. Very important also to have that variety. So again, lateral work, particularly a change of direction. And if you think about canter transitions, again, inside leg on, usually outside leg back, you've got to be able to maintain that core position while you're moving your extremities. Shoulder mobility. We don't really have this kind of a movement in riding, but we do need to have mobility in the shoulders. So this is a bilateral shoulder range of motion. And what it does is two different things. One arm takes on extension, internal rotation, and adduction. The other one is flexion, external rotation, and abduction. So doing the opposite thing, basically. This one, contact on a circle, kind of think about that. You're riding on a circle, You've got to make contact, but actually one arm is a little bit back, kind of holding the horse in the frame, and one is allowing. So that's that. And then this one is adjusting the girth. How often have you been on a horse and your leg is up here and you've got to reach behind you and actually hold the reins? So that's how this one applies. The active straight leg raise. This identifies limitations in flexion and extension. And it also challenges your ability to dissociate lower extremities while maintaining a core pelvis there. Think about that in cantering, for example. You need to be able to dissociate kind of your upper body from your lower body, again, to ask for that and put the leg back and on. Rising trot as well. If you think about that motion and flexion and extension, flexion is when your hip flexors come like this, and then extension, think about rising trot. You need to be able to have that movement very fluid to be able to move with your horse's movement. Trunk stability push-up, this is always a favorite. This is quite difficult for a lot of people to get it, how we want to see it. I mean, push-ups in general are difficult, but this tests the ability to stabilize your spine during upward body symmetrical pushing movement. It's not a test of upper body strength though. You do need some upper body strength, but what you really need is a stable core, so when you push up, you come up as one piece. What we see most of the time is someone peeling up off the ground that way. And it's not necessarily, they probably have enough upper body strength to get up off the ground, but to be able to stabilize this core and maintain that coming up is the difficult part here. This one, and we don't necessarily have this exact type of movement in riding because we're kind of in a more open kinetic type chain. But if you think about contact as your push-up, when you have contact, it's not really a pulling, it's actually a little bit more of a pushing motion, and it is maintaining that kind of energetic connection. So I think of contact as that, and also a real pushing, if you jump, your automatic release when you push away, you've got to be able to push without falling over. You've got to maintain that really hard core strength there. And the last one, rotary stability. And this is a multi-plane pelvis, core, and shoulder girdle stability during combined upper and lower body mobility. It's very complex. The pattern requires proper neuromuscular control and energy transfer through the torso. And I basically put this one, it is everything in riding because we have to work usually in the 3 anatomical planes. If you're familiar with anatomy, you have a frontal plane that's kind of like a jumping jack this way. The sagittal is moving forward, so like a running gait type thing. Transverse is, say, like a baseball player hitting a bat, like moving this way. So with riding, think about riding a circle. You're using your frontal plane, you're using your leg as adduction to come in on the horse here. Your right leg, if you're going left, is back just slightly, and it's coming in here to help guide the horse around. Again, you've got this is exaggerated, but this kind of movement with your reins, and you actually have to have a little bit of a twist. So that's everything right there. I find with riders, this is challenging. Most people have, we just don't live in a world where we use this very much. And riders, think about it, you might turn really great to one direction, and the other direction, you kind of fall in and your horse like turns on a dime. That's a lot to do with rotary stability. There. So before we actually do a screen here, I just want to show you how we score these. It's a score 1 to 3. 0, if 0 comes up, it means someone has pain. If someone has pain in this, and it's pain kind of like, not like soreness, like, oh, I haven't done this in a while, but like a sharp pain, we'll refer that out straight away. That means there's something going on that I'm not qualified to deal with. And 1 is the lowest score, 3 is the highest. 1 is gross mobility or stability patterns that have problems. They're causing high degrees of stress on your body, and they will lead to microtrauma, so they will lead eventually to injury. A 2 is better than 1. So you're getting a little better there, but you're still breaking certain mechanical laws, and if uncorrected, can still lead to injury down the line. A 3 is adequate functional movement patterns throughout. What you'll find too is when we test this, you probably have different scores on every movement. You may have some that are very solid, very functional, and some that are very dysfunctional. That could be due to if you have injury, for example. You can also be functional one side to the other, where you might, like, say, have an injury on your left side, but the right side doing something really well, and the left side is really challenged because of that injury. What we do once we have these scores is we assign corrective exercises to address mobility and stability, and we always work mobility to stability. We find if you work mobility first, stability actually starts to come kind of on its own naturally. And then you may have a score today, even if you're perfect 3s today, we rescreen periodically. Say 3 months from now your life has changed and you suddenly are traveling a lot on airplanes. Your body's probably going to adapt differently to that. You may pick up some dysfunctional patterns. So it's important to always screen and rescreen.